Thanks, Caitlin. Hi, everybody. My name is Jason Daoust. I'm a physiotherapist. I work with Alberta Health Services, and I help support physiotherapists in Northern Alberta. Some of you might know me as well. I also work with or volunteer with Special Olympics as a clinical director for the fun fitness component of healthy athletes. So if you've had me at any of your tournaments, I've been the guy to put you through some of that physical testing where we check your balance and we check how many sit-ups you can do, and we your grip strength and fun stuff like that. And then we talk about what sorts of things you might need to think about and work on to help you with your sport. I'm going to switch over to some slides here to guide my presentation. Okay. So yeah, the title is Beyond Sport, the benefits of physical activity for your health, your performance, and your longevity. Okay. I like to keep this fairly laid back. The slides keep me on track. This is a topic I can talk for hours about, but I promised to not go more than an hour on it today. It's something I talk to people a lot about as a physiotherapist. But I think it's important for athletes too, right? It's not just people in rehab that need to think about this. So I'm going to start the talk with my take-home message. And, this is usually how we wrap it up at the end, but I just want everyone to kind of know the theme today is movement is good. It's as simple as that. Now, for the next 40 minutes or so, I'm going to try and tell you why movement is good, okay? So when it comes to movement, we kind of have these three major categories. There's sport, there's exercise, and there's physical activity, okay? And you guys, I think probably, these aren't new words. You know what these things are. You're all involved in sport and exercise, and you all do some kind of physical activity. But I want to talk about it and really explain what the difference is, okay? So we'll start with sport. And we got lots of definitions for sport. So I just picked a few off the internet that I thought were pretty decent. So one website describes it as an athletic activity requiring skill or physical prowess. Okay, that makes sense. Athletic activity has some kind of skill. Okay, that makes sense. Emphasis on physical in that definition. If I go to the next one, an activity involving physical exertion and skill in which an individual or a team competes against another or others for entertainment. So that one's pretty good too. Again, it talks about physical exertion, but also skill, individual or a team. That makes sense to me. For entertainment, that was interesting to me. I don't always think about entertainment, but maybe entertainment for yourself if you're the participant, the person doing it, right? So maybe that's okay. And then Wikipedia describes it as any form of competitive physical activity or game that aims to use, maintain, or improve physical ability and skills. I'm cut off here. So that's pretty good too. So I think there's elements in all of those definitions. I think some of the key words are, physical, activity, skill, movement, competition. These are all the things that go into sport and what makes it a sport and maybe makes it different from exercise. So here I just have a bunch of pictures of lots of things that come to mind when I think about sports, right? So it could be soccer, team sports like soccer or basketball, more individual activities like running or bowling. Video gaming is still considered a sport, right? You're still using skill, you're competing. There is some degree of physical movement. And then my favorite, of course, is the one and only Jackie Barrett, Special Olympian, record holder, Canadian Sport Hall of Fame inductee. This guy's just the best. If you've never seen Jackie lift weights, please, go on YouTube, find videos of him lifting, doing his squats. He's amazing. Okay, so after sport, the next one is exercise. So I settled on one definition here. Exercise is a subset of physical activity that is planned, it is structured, it is repetitive, and it has a final or an intermediate objective, the improvement or maintenance of physical fitness. So that's a long description. The key is exercise is planned. It has a purpose. It is structured, right? There's a certain number of things that you do. You do it for a certain amount of time. There's a real prescription to it. It's not just activity where you're not keeping track of anything, right? Exercise, we definitely want to keep track of it because we have a very specific purpose for it. So again, just some of the key components when it comes to exercise and how exercise is different than sport. Remember, sport is physical, but it's more about the competition and the performance of your skill and ability. When it comes to exercise, this is where we're doing a planned activity that is very structured in terms of how much we do, how hard we do it, how often we do it, and how long we do it for. We do it repetitively, and it's going to be focused on a certain skill, right? Maybe that exercise is focused on making you faster. Maybe it's focused on helping you jump higher. Maybe it's focused on improving your balance. Sport-specific exercises might be aimed at improving your jump height in basketball or improving your shot accuracy. So again, just some examples of exercises here, right? So I won't go through all these. These are just different pictures of people doing different kinds of exercise, right? Exercise can be weight training, it can be running, it can be stretching and yoga, it can be balance and stability type exercises, or it can be a combination of all of those things. Okay, so that leaves us with physical activity, and this is the one we're really going to focus on tonight. So physical activity is defined as any voluntary bodily movement produced by your muscles that requires energy. Physical activity encompasses all activities at any intensity performed any time of day or night. It includes exercise and incidental activity integrated into daily activity. What that means is it includes all the extra activity in your day, right? Physical activity includes reaching up into the cupboard to get a dish. It includes walking from your living room to the bathroom. It includes bending over to pick up your shoes. Those are all little pieces of physical activity. And of course, physical activity includes exercise and sport. So physical activity is our big term that everything else falls under. So when we say physical activity, these are some examples, right? I'm talking about basic everyday things: walking, pushing, propelling your own wheelchair, going up and down the stairs, biking, swimming, but doing things like yard work and cleaning up around the house, shoveling, working with tools. These are all examples of physical activity. I just want to mention this. We're not going to focus on this, but when we talk about this physical activity that everyone has in their day, in physiology science, we actually have this term called NEAT. And what that stands for is non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So what that really means is all the energy that you burn with non-exercise activity. So things that are not sport, things that are not exercise. And we keep track of that in physiology science, so we can learn more about how the body works and how much energy it uses. The point of me bringing this up is just to recognize we do use energy when it's not exercise or sport, right? So it's a very significant thing. And we'll talk more about that. We're not going to talk about this NEAT concept, but I thought it was worth bringing up, just because it is such a big thing in the science world, that we do study it a lot. So under this NEAT principle, it's everything that's not sleeping, eating, or exercise. So the energy we use for walking, typing, yard work, working with tools, even fidgeting, right? Even if as you're shifting your weight in your chair, maybe pulling up, playing with your fingers a little bit, or maybe you've got something in your hands that you're just sort of moving around while you listen to me, you're using energy, and that energy, or pardon me, you're doing movement, and that movement is using energy. So even our simple things increase your metabolism, and over the course of your day, these things add up. So each of those little things is little, but after you've done a bunch of little things through your day, you've ended up doing a lot. Okay, so now this will kind of bring us back to what I really want to talk about. So there are lots of benefits to just regular, everyday physical activity. And again, when I say that, I'm talking about walking, moving around the house, doing your housework, doing your yard work, playing with a pet if that's what you do, all those little things. And so these are the main benefits. We're going to talk about mobility. We're going to talk about circulation. We're going to talk about the benefit for your bones and your cartilage. We're going to talk about strength and this idea of learning and adaptation. So when it comes to mobility, what I mean by that is your flexibility, the range of motion, how much your different joints and body parts can move, the lubrication of your joints, how easily, not just how far the joints move, but how easy they can move. And we're going to talk about the lengthening and shortening of tissues. So I have this complicated picture, but it does what I need it to do. So we don't have to pay attention to any of the words on it, okay? I just want to focus on the leg. So what this picture is showing us, it's showing us a leg moving through a step, okay? So you see there's two legs together. One skeleton leg has sort of the outline of a leg around it, okay? So let's just focus on that. So if we look at the first leg, that's when our foot hits the ground, okay? So when that foot hits the ground, you can see the heel will hit first, and then the foot will be flat. So the ankle isn't really doing anything. The foot is flat, the ankle is neutral. When I move up the leg, at the knee is a little bit bent. If I go up the leg more to the hip is a little bit bent. So that means the muscles on the front of my leg are longer and the muscles on the back of my leg are shorter. Now, as I move to the next leg, and this is where our leg starts to move through the step, right? So our foot has hit the ground, we're now starting to move forward. If we look at the ankle again, the leg bone is now tilting forward on my foot. So my ankle joint has moved, okay? So as that ankle joint moves, the muscles on the back of my leg get longer, okay? When I look up at the knee, well, the knee has become straighter. Well, as that knee becomes straighter, the muscles on the front of my thigh, they're getting shorter, and the muscles on the back of my thigh are now getting longer. In the third picture, this is when I'm starting to lift my leg off the ground. So again, look at the foot. It's coming off the ground. My toe is down, but my heel is up. So as my heel comes up and my toe stays down, the muscles on the back of my ankle are getting short again. If I go up to the knee is starting to bend again. So the muscles on the front of my thigh are now getting longer, and the muscles on the back are getting shorter. So we don't have to memorize all this. This is just an example. The point is, as we go through this movement, there's this constant cycle of things getting longer, things getting shorter, joints moving through different ranges of motion, okay? And as you do this over and over and over again through your day, this helps promote normal mobility and flexibility. Now, we're not stretching our muscles when we do this, so we're not really making big changes to our flexibility, but we help maintain it, right? When we don't move enough and we don't move enough normally, that's when things get tight, tissues start to get shorter, and it becomes more difficult to move our joints and our muscles through these typical ranges. So we think about this when it comes to sport, okay? So when we do lots of normal movement, and whatever normal movement is for you, it might mean pushing yourself in a wheelchair, it might mean walking, it might mean doing things with your arms, if that's part of your day. But if we maintain our normal flexibility, this can help prevent injuries like sprains and strains. Sprains are injuries to the muscles, where muscles start to tear a bit or they get overstretched. And that's a strain. Sprains are when our ligaments get overstretched. So if we can keep things flexible and maintain our normal mobility, then we're less likely to tear those things because they won't be as tight as they would be if we just didn't do enough activity. Like I said, if things are flexible, they'll be less resistant to movement. Okay, so this is really important in sport, because when you're doing your sport and competing, it's not just important that you can do the movements, but you want to be able to do the movements easy, right? If your knees and your hips and ankles are tight, it's going to be tougher for you to run fast. It's going to be tougher for you to turn quickly to catch a pass. It's going to be more difficult for you to move and as you're defending a person in soccer or floor hockey or basketball. And the nice thing is, most of our everyday movements are things that we do in our sports, right? A lot of our sports involve walking or running, and maybe we can think of running as just really, really fast walking. Reaching your arms up, reaching your arms to the side, twisting your body to look behind you. These are things we do every day through our day, and we often see those same things in the sports that we play. I'm just going to take a drink. My allergies have been giving me trouble. It seems like this last week, every day, a different type of tree is pollinating, so no break yet. The next thing I want to talk about is circulation. So when I say circulation, I mean, what I'm talking about is blood flow. I'm also talking about the movement of synovial fluid, which is the fluid in many of our joints, and the movement of lymphatic fluid. Okay, and so lymphatic fluid is a fluid in our bodies that helps remove waste products from our tissues, right? So it helps remove waste from a lot of our body's organs and our muscles. So it works with our blood flow, to help keep our tissues healthy and working well. So when it comes to movement and moving our bodies, circulation is helped by a few things. Number one, muscle pump. So what I mean by that, and this is what this picture is. In this picture, we have a muscle, and then down the middle of it is a blood vessel. Okay, so a vein or an artery that our blood travels through. So when we move, our muscles contract or they tighten, and then they relax or loosen. Okay, so when the muscle is relaxed, as they are in the first picture, there's very little pressure on that blood vessel. Okay, but as your muscle tightens or contracts, it puts pressure on that blood vessel, helping to push the blood along, helping to push it through its path. And then when that muscle relaxes, it takes the pressure off, and that blood vessel can fill up again. So one of the most important muscle pumps that we have in our body is our ankles or our calf muscles. Every time we step on the ground and move forward, we're creating a muscle pump in our lower leg, and that helps to move the blood out of the foot and out of the lower leg when we walk. You guys may have experienced when you sit for really long periods, People often experience this on airplanes because, when you're on an airplane, you tend to sit for a few hours. You don't really move around very much. And then your feet and your legs get really swollen. Well, that's because you haven't been moving, and that muscle pump hasn't been helping push that blood around. So just very simple activity is really important to help move your blood around. And moving your blood around is really important because it's your blood that delivers oxygen and nutrients to all of the tissues of your body, including your working muscles. So everything can work the way it's supposed to work and be healthy. We also have things like tissue compression and release. So as we move, I talk with my hands, and I don't think you can see me right now. But if you think about, let me think of a sport here. Well, even just moving your arms, right? We talk about walking a lot, but let's talk about basketball, where you're moving your arms around a lot, right? You might be throwing your arms up to block a pass. You might be moving your arms up to shoot the ball. You might be moving your arms out to the side to catch a pass. Well, as you're moving your arms in all these different directions, different parts of your body are getting compressed in certain positions and then released in other positions. So it's kind of like that muscle pump again, but just based on your body's positions and how they change. And then gravity plays a role in your position, right? Gravity is this force in the earth that's constantly pulling down. So if we didn't move, gravity is always pulling our circulation down towards our feet. But as we're active and moving and constantly changing our body position, we help combat that a bit, right? Gravity is not always pulling the circulation to the same part of our body if we keep moving our body around. So this is just another example of something simple like walking, okay? I kind of talked about this already, but if you kind of just focus on the pink leg in this picture, the first step or the first photo is when the person's heel the weight is going onto the leg. It really tightens up to help push your body forward. So two things are happening, right? As we take a step onto the leg and we put our body weight on the leg, we're compressing our tissues, pushing blood out of the tissues. Then as we lift the leg up, we take the pressure off the leg, and then fluid can then flow back into the tissues. The muscles, as they help push us forward, the muscles tighten and push the blood along. As we take the weight off the leg, the muscles relax and allow the blood to flow back in. So bone and cartilage health is kind of the next thing to talk about because it is related to circulation. Now, first of all, bone responds to stress and strain, okay? If I were to ask you how you can make muscles strong, I think, well, you lift weights, right? You lift heavy things. That will tell your muscles that they need to be stronger, and they'll respond to that by changing to become bigger and stronger. Bones kind of do the same thing, but not because of moving heavy things. Bone responds to the stress and strain that it's exposed to. So things like walking, stepping, jumping, a moderate amount of impact and compression to your bones is actually a good thing. Early in life, this helps make your bones stronger. Later in life, it helps keep your bones strong and prevents them from getting too weak too quickly, right? Bones do break down over time. They get weaker as you get older. But how quickly they get weaker can be affected by how much activity that you do. Because if you do a lot of activity, that puts the stress and strain on the bone that tells the bone it needs to stay strong, it needs to stay thick. If you don't have that activity, you're not giving any of that stimulus to your bone. So it's going to wear down a lot more quickly. Promoting your circulation is also good for bone because bone does have its own blood supply. So anything that you can do to promote good, normal blood circulation throughout your day is going to help your bones. When it comes to articular cartilage, though, articular cartilage has no blood supply. And articular cartilage is the cartilage in your joints, okay? So in this picture here, this is a knee. So the bones that cover the surfaces of the knee joint, that's an example of articular cartilage. So this is where I mentioned earlier synovial fluid. And so synovial fluid is what delivers nutrients to the cartilage and keeps it healthy. And it is very dependent on that compression and release cycle that I talked about. So as you step, when your foot hits the ground and your weight goes on your leg, that puts compression in your knee. When that compression goes on your knee, it squeezes that cartilage like a sponge and pushes all the fluid out of it. When you take the pressure off the knee, just like a sponge, if you squeeze a sponge in your hand and squeeze all the water out, but then you put it back in the sink and you let go of the sponge, it's going to suck all the water back in. Your cartilage does kind of the same thing. When you take the pressure off, it's going to suck some fluid back into it, okay? So it's very important to be active and to move, to maintain the health of your cartilage. Because if we don't, just like bone, cartilage wears down over time as well. But we can affect that by being active and promoting this circulation. We can keep our cartilage healthier for longer. I won't go through this. This is the same example, just for bone and cartilage, right? So I don't think I need to go through that anymore. Okay, so when it comes to strength, we've probably all heard that term, use it or lose it, okay? And there's some truth to that. If you are inactive and not doing things, you will become weaker at those things. But if you do those things, you will maintain your strength, okay? And maintain is the key here. Your regular everyday activity isn't really going to make you stronger than you already are, but it will keep you as strong. When you're not active, that is when you lose strength and muscle mass, okay? It takes exercise, right? Things that are planned and structured and intentional to actually make things stronger. But once you have that strength, just regular activity can really help you keep that strength, right? You don't always have to do the same intense exercise to keep the strength that you when you lose your people often think it's the opposite. Higher you jump, maybe
Jason, are you still there? Looks like you're muted.
Can you guys hear me right now?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Sorry about that.
Thank you.
Just let me check something here. Okay. I don't know. Maybe I can blame that on my kids playing video games and slowing down the internet. But I'll pick up where I left off. Thank you for being patient, everyone. Okay. Okay, so I think I cut out on this slide. So all I was really saying is, you know, your baseline level of strength is what just makes your body easier to move, right? To create speed requires force, and that comes from your strength. Your strength determines how high you can jump, how far you can throw, how hard you can hit, how much you can lift or move. We also know that stronger muscles are less likely to get injured. As a physiotherapist, I especially like to tell people that your level of strength can not only predict your performance, but it can predict your long-term ability or disability, right? Your baseline level of strength right now can tell us a little bit about how strong you're likely in your strength. Okay, so this one's a little tricky. Learning and adaptation. So this is improving basic movements. And how do we improve? We improve by doing, of course. You guys know this in sport. You guys all practice things. You practice to get better at it. Well, your intention with your everyday activities might not be to improve, but that's what your body is doing, okay? Your body learns whether you're aware of it or not, okay? When you move, your body is receiving information from the environment you're moving in. It receives information about how you're moving and what's happening to you during that movement, okay? So I'll talk a little bit more in detail about these things, but learning and adaptation feeds into supporting your reaction time and what we might refer to as your reflexes, how quickly you can react to something, your overall stability and balance, and this thing that we call proprioception, but I'll talk more about that in a moment. Actually, I'm not quite done here yet. Well, no. So when we talk about reaction time, oftentimes in sport, we'll use a term like quick feet, right? Quick on your toes. You know, reaction time is really important whenever changing directions is a part of your sport, right? So you can tell I'm a big basketball fan because that's always the first thing that comes to mind. But this is the same in any sport where you have a person on offense and a person on defense, right? The person on offense is always trying to get away from the person on defense, and the person on defense is trying to keep up. So there's lots of changing directions, right? When the person on offense is trying to trick their defender, they're trying to change directions, but as the defender, you're trying to react really quickly. So this is also important when it comes to being able to speed up and slow down, right? You know, being able to slow down how, you know, your run. And this is how we can actually prevent injuries quite a bit. Because most sport injuries, if we're not talking about impact type sports, are going to happen during the part of movement when your body is trying to slow itself down, okay? So if you have learned and adapted enough, and I'll talk about what that means, then you slow down very efficiently and safely. It's really about being able to respond to things that you are not expecting, okay? And I went through some of those examples already. So before I move on, I think I just need to explain a little bit about, you know, this idea of, this idea of learning and how it helps your reaction time, right? So I'm just going to use that simple example of walking again. So when you take a step and your foot hits the ground, right? Sometimes the ground is flat and even and there's no challenge, right? So your body doesn't have to really do anything too difficult to keep yourself balanced and upright. But sometimes you might take a step and the ground is uneven, right? Maybe it's a little bit of an angle to the left. So when your foot hits the ground and your foot is then going to tilt a little bit to the left, well, when that happens, the weight on your ankle joint will change. Ligaments and muscles will start to stretch a little bit because of that change in position. Your body will sense this before you even become aware of it, right? We have sensors in our muscles and our ligaments that tell us or tell our brain that this is happening. So those messages then go shooting to our brain, and the brain sends messages shooting back to our muscles to tell them what to do, right? So the muscles around my ankle might tighten a certain way to correct that position. It might also tell my body to shift my weight to keep myself balanced, right? So if you think about playing sports on a field where you're running, the ground is very uneven, right? There's lumps of grass, there's lumps of dirt. So you're constantly having to adjust, changing which muscles are tightening and which ones are relaxing, and how you shift your body weight in response to these little changes that you're not expecting. So our everyday activity, like things like walking on the grass, walking on dirt, even just walking on the street and up and down curbs, these are all learning experiences for our body, right? Which might not sound like much, but if you don't do those things, the impact is quite tremendous. So that's what I mean when I just talk about learning and adaptation through everyday physical activity. So balance and stability is the other part of that, right? So when I say balance and stability, this is not falling down is sort of a big example, but it's also about preventing injury. We don't always fall down when we lose our balance or we become unstable. We might just wobble, right? We might just have to take a stutter step to keep ourselves stable. Well, the point in sport is that energy is wasted on extra movements, right? So if you are less stable or you don't have good balance, you're wasting a lot of energy to try and maintain your balance. But like I said, if you are active on a daily basis, this helps to improve your balance and stability. So when you go into your sport, you're not going to waste so much energy just trying to stay stable. This allows you to focus on the task at hand. So I have the example of basketball free throw shooting here, right? If you are balanced and stable, this is going to give you much better control for your arms and legs because you can focus on the shot, not having to focus on how steady you are, right? So I've got two players here. If you guys are, well, you're probably all too young. These are older basketball players. So Steve Nash was a Canadian, very famous basketball player, extremely good, I think 3-time MVP of the NBA, extremely good free throw shooter, right? He's a shorter guy, but very balanced and stable, very fast on his feet. And part of that is because his balance and stability was so good and very good at his free throw shooting. The other person is Shaquille O'Neal, who was a brutal free throw shooter, very good player, a giant man, very strong, but not that stable, right? He was not fast. And his shot he was great at dunking the ball, but his shot was terrible. And I believe some of that is because he wasn't stable and controlled in his movements. The last bit of this learning and adaptation is this idea of proprioception. And, it's a complicated word, but it's not a complicated idea. What it means is just you being aware of your body's position in space, okay? The idea that if I close my eyes, I can find my nose with my hand, right? Because even if I don't see my hand, my body knows where my nose is, right? Or I can put my hands behind my back and find them, right? Or, I can reach behind me and scratch my right butt cheek because I know where it is. I don't need to see it. I just know where it is. How many times can I say that? So this learning and adaptation I mentioned, right? By just doing things, maybe let's talk about housework instead of walking, right? When I'm doing housework and I'm, cleaning my room and putting things on shelves and wiping down counters and cleaning the bathroom mirror where I have to reach up in front of myself, right? By moving my body in all of these different ways, I'm giving my body the opportunity to learn what it feels like to have my arm or my leg in all of these different positions, right? And if I learn what it feels like, then I no longer need to see it to know that it's happening, if that makes sense, right? And if I have better proprioception and better body awareness when it comes to my sport, this allows me to focus on the sport. I don't have to think about where my hand is or where my foot is. And if I don't have to think about those things, I'm going to have better balance. I'm going to be quicker. My reaction time will be better. I'll have those faster reflexes, okay? The second part on this slide here is what I was talking about earlier with these nerve sensors we have in our tissues, right? So all of these sensors, they can detect our speed of movement. They can detect changes in the angles of our joints. They can detect changes in the direction of pressure or forces that our body is feeling. It might be just the pressure of your foot on the ground, or it might be the resistance that your arm feels if you're swimming, right? And you move your arm through the water. When the water pushes back on your skin, that is giving your body information that those sensors can detect, and it'll tell your brain about what's happening. So all those messages taken in, like I said, it allows your brain to react and then tell your muscles what to do without you having to be aware of it. I hope that makes sense. You can tell me if it doesn't in the questions. So I think what I just said there is, can be represented with the same picture, the guy walking, right? So when that foot hits the ground, right, a lot of things are happening. The joint is moving, certain muscles are getting longer, certain muscles are getting shorter. The foot is experiencing pressure on the ground. We're putting weight through the joints in some positions, and then we take the weight off in other positions. So as we move through that full step cycle, every change in those things gives information to these sensors to tell our brain what to do, okay? So if our foot does hit the ground, and let's say, oh, I know what to do. I have kids, so when my kids were younger, they had lots of little toys, like things like Lego and little action figures. And, sometimes when I'm walking in the house, I don't see the little thing on the ground and I step on it, and it hurts. But when I step on it, what happens is I end up lifting my foot up off the ground very quickly before I actually feel the pain, right? I feel the pain very quickly, but I lift my foot first. That's because there's sensors in my foot, right? So as my foot fell upon that Lego piece, the pressure of that Lego piece on my foot is not normal. So the sensors in my foot detect, this is not normal, this is bad. Tells my brain, get that foot out of there, it's in trouble. So my brain does that, tells I start lifting my foot, and then as I lift it, that's when I start to feel it. So it can be very quick. So same thing in, like I said, when we talked about running on uneven surfaces, right? It doesn't have to be a piece of Lego, but stepping on a piece of ground that is uneven can give your brain the same kinds of signals that can cause the same kind of body reactions. Okay, So let's summarize. That was a whole lot I said. I hope it made sense, but let's just make sure everything I said is captured in what I hope my message is. So first, daily physical activity provides you with the opportunity to move your body through basic patterns of movement that also occur in your sport. So, like I said, just being active on a daily basis, doing normal activities, walking, going up and down the stairs, putting things away on shelves and in cupboards, mowing the lawn, shoveling snow at other times of the year, vacuuming, playing with your pet. These are basic everyday things, but many of these movements are represented in our sport as well. Okay, so lots of time in our day to allow our body to learn and adapt to those movements outside of our actual sport and training. Second, regular repetitive physical activity can help maintain or improve your overall mobility, promote healthy circulation, support bone and cartilage health, maintain your overall strength, and support your balance and stability. Okay, so hopefully we made it clear how those things happen, but the key is they happen through just regular everyday activity. It doesn't take sophisticated exercise to promote these things. You know, your exercise and your training are good. Those things shouldn't stop. But everyday physical activity, I think, is just as important, and perhaps even more important, because this is the stuff that we do every day. And then thirdly, the combined benefits of daily physical activity may contribute to your sport performance and reduce your risk of injury, okay? Through all those things I just mentioned in the previous list. And that, I hope, brings us back to the take-home message. Movement is good. And hopefully now we have a little bit better understanding of why movement is good. So now we can open it up to questions. I will stop sharing my screen.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Jason. So now Jason will answer any questions you have. So you can either put them in the chat or raise your hand. So Alex, I see your hands up. Would you like to ask your question?
Sure. I got a simple question for you, Jason. What is a simple way to just prevent the stretches and some injuries after you just finished workout?
So a simple way to prevent injuries, something simple you can do after your workouts? Is that the question?
Yeah. So when I started doing workouts through the gym, so I did a treadmill, and then I did the weights as well. After that, I managed to do like stretches such as doing like arms and legs and stomach,
Okay.
etc.
Okay. So what you're describing actually sounds really good, and you're doing it in the order that I would recommend.
Right.
People often ask about stretching and when we should stretch. When you do your workouts, you can do very short stretches before the workout to help you warm up, okay? When I say short stretches, I mean you're holding your stretch for maybe 5 to 10 seconds. They're very gentle, they're not strenuous. You're just moving the body to loosen it up and get some blood flowing to warm up the tissue. When you do your more aggressive stretching, you should do that at the end of your workout. That's when your muscles are going to be warm, there's going to be good blood flow, and the tissues are going to be more flexible. So you will get a better stretch, and there'll be less resistance to the stretch. So you're less likely to strain or tear something. Does that answer the question? Awesome.
Great. Laura, would you like to ask your question?
Okay. I think here. When you go hiking and you're using like your legs and lots of physical movement, does that also give you like more like muscles in your legs as well?
Yeah, that's a good question. So when you say hiking, do you mean like going uphill and like
Yes.
fairly aggressive stuff? Yeah.
Yes, because I do a lot of big hikes. I was just in Jasper. I just got back home actually.
Oh,
And
beautiful.
so a lot of our hikes were uphill and it was, uneven term, but I think I grew a
Yeah.
lot of new muscles.
Okay. So when it comes to building strength, getting
Yes.
stronger, I mean the basic message is doing more than you're used to, right? Whether it's lifting something or like hiking, if you're pushing yourself to do more than you're used to doing, then the effect will be to get stronger. But
Okay.
there's a certain frequency and intensity and volume that's needed. So what I mean by that is, if you just did one tough hike all summer and
Right.
that was the only time you did it, well, then hiking's not going to make you stronger. But
Okay, I see.
if you were hiking on a regular basis,
Yes, I was.
yeah, then
Every day.
okay, well then absolutely. That's going to get you stronger to a point, but at a point you'll kind of plateau, right? You might get stronger from other things, but by maintaining your regular hiking habits, that's going to keep your strength where it is, right? If you wanted your hiking to make you even stronger, then your hikes would need to become longer or more intense.
Yeah, some of them are.
Yeah.
I gotta admit.
Yeah, no, and that's like our workouts too, right? So yeah, in a very general sense, yes, they will. But like I said, you can't just decide like, oh, I did a really hard hike, today, and now I'm not going to hike again I'll walk, but I'm not going to go hiking again for 2 weeks. You're not going to see a lot of strength change from that one hike. But if it's something that you're doing an intense hike every week, then you would see some degree of strength improvement from doing them.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Laura. Erica, you can ask your question.
Hi, Jason. It's Erica.
Hi.
You could hear me?
Yes, you're good.
Okay. I have a big question. I go hiking with my dad too. And what is a good stretch to do after we?
Oh, you're muted, but I think you were asking what's a good stretch to do after you go hiking.
Yeah. I mean, there's always lots of stretches I could recommend. The one that is probably the most useful for something like hiking is a calf stretch. If you give me 1 second, I can probably quickly show you a picture of what that looks like. And I'm sure it's a stretch you know. Let me just get a picture here. Okay, so this I just found it online real quick, but if you can see, there's that picture of that lady doing the stretch, right? The leg behind her is the one that she's stretching. So this is a great one you can do. You can lean up against a car, right? So once you get back to the car, this is an easy stretch to do just outside the car. When it comes to stretching after exercise, I always will tell people you want to hold those stretches for at least 30 seconds, okay? When I answered the other question about stretching before exercise, those we just do short, 5-10 seconds. But afterwards, we want to hold those. So minimum 30 seconds. You can hold for longer. What I tell people is I say, hold for 30 seconds or longer until you feel some tension decrease, right? And so what you can do is do one leg, then do the other leg, and then go back and do each leg again. And when you do it the second time, think about it. And if it feels a little bit easier or a little bit looser, you've made a difference. If it doesn't, repeat again and keep repeating until it feels a little bit looser or a little bit easier.
Okay, thank you, Jason.
Good?
Yep, thank
No
you.
problem.
Okay, great questions. We'll do one more question, but before we do that, I'll get Jason to hold up the password. Just if you have to go, then you have it. It's yellow hamster.
Yeah, I was just going to say, there we go.
There we go. Perfect. Okay, so it's yellow hamster. Okay, and our last question I'll take from Shelby, and then if anybody else has any questions, you can always email us or post them in the Facebook group, and we can answer them. So Shelby, you can go ahead and unmute.
Hey, I have a question. If you walk, if I go for a walk, my knees start to hurt, and I usually stop.
So Shelby, I heard you say when you're walking, you start to get knee pain. But what was the rest of it?
I have knee pain, but the rest of it, like, I usually stop, and I don't move.
Okay. So I mean that's a tough one for me to really say what you should or should not do, right? When we're just having a conversation online like this. But I'll try and give you just some, basic information, right? So when it comes to activities that lead to pain, right, and it might be walking, it could be something else. In a very general sense, we work with people and we say, okay, well, when does the pain become a problem? Is it after walking a block or 10 blocks or whatever it is? Then we say, okay, well, if we know that, it usually starts to hurt after 5 minutes of walking, then we might say, okay, well, let's work on our walking, but we're not going to go for 5 minutes. We're going to go for 2 or 3 minutes, and then we'll stop and we'll take a rest, and then we'll go 2 or 3 minutes more. Okay. And then we gradually build up that time, right? And stopping and resting might not mean you have to sit down for half an hour. It might mean, like, if you have a nice path or a nice route in your neighborhood that you like to walk, it might mean, well, okay, I'm going to walk for 2 or 3 minutes and then I'll just stop and I'm going to, just rest in wherever I'm standing. Maybe I'll take my phone out and I'll see if I can take some nice pictures. Maybe there's some cool birds or, whatever. And then I'll rest for a couple minutes and then I'll walk for another 2 or 3 minutes, right? And then gradually over time, we would gradually try and increase the time to see if we can get past that 5 minutes. Now, if it's a problem that doesn't seem to improve, and especially if it's a problem that you don't know why it's there, right? Your knee started hurting, but you really don't know why. If I fall down the stairs and my knee hurts, well, I know why it hurts. But if I just wake up tomorrow and all of a sudden my knee hurts and I can't walk very far, that's not normal. That's when I'm going to go see my doctor or I'm going to go see a physiotherapist, right? So I don't think people need to panic every time they feel pain and go out and see a physio or a doctor. But if we are seeing that pain that is sticking around and we don't know why, and it's interfering with basic things like walking, if we're not seeing it improve after a few days, I would say either go see your doctor or go see a physiotherapist. And actually with the physiotherapist, I'll just put in a little plug here. Alberta Health Services now, but you will get a physiotherapist or an occupational therapist. So they can give you advice about injuries and conditions like you're describing, and they'll talk to you and ask you questions and get more information about it, and maybe be able to give you more advice. If they agree that maybe that you should go see somebody, they can give you information about where you can go to see someone that can help you. I don't have the number with me, but if you just Google the Alberta Rehab Advice Line, that number will come up.
And I've also put my email in the chat, Shelby. So if you'd like to email me, you can email me and I can help you connect with those people as well. Okay. So I know that we have a lot of questions left. However, it is 8:03, so we're going to wrap it up. If you have a question that you would like me to answer or pass on to Jason to answer, again, my email is in the chat and you can send me an email or post it in the Facebook group. Okay. So thank you so much, Jason, for joining us tonight. I know that I learned a lot, so I'm sure our athletes learned a lot as well. And I hope that everybody has a great evening.
Thanks so much, everybody. Nice to see you all.